Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Selecting Hydrophobic Filter Membranes for Venting and Gas Filtration in Medical Applications. I'm Cassie Saltman of Labroots, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Today's educational web seminar is presented by Labroots and brought to you by Pall Medical. To learn more, visit www.cytivalifesciences.com. We encourage you to participate today by submitting any questions you may have during the presentation. To do so, simply type them into the Ask a Question box and click Submit. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation. You may also submit any technical issues here as well if you have trouble seeing or hearing the presentation. I'd like to now welcome our speaker, Jacques Hestres, Product Manager at Cytiva. Jacques has over 25 years at Pall and has held various positions in customer and technical service operations, planning, and product management. Jacques, you may now begin your presentation.
All right, thank you, Cassie, for that introduction. And thanks to all of you for joining us today and taking time from your busy schedules to join our webcast. We look forward to receiving your feedback during our question and answer session at the end, and encourage you to send us your questions in the meantime so we can address them at the end of our presentation. Our agenda for today will include a short introduction of who we are at Pall Medical. We'll give an overview of the topic of filtration and how hydrophobic filter membranes fit within the medical device industry. We'll then follow with the focus subject of discussing the key aspects to be aware of when we're selecting a filter membrane, both from an application as well as from a manufacturing perspective. We'll touch briefly on our hydrophobic membrane portfolio and then conclude with the question and answer session. So without further ado, let's start with a short introduction on Pall Medical and filtration. Pall Corporation was founded over 75 years ago by Dr. David Pall and grew to become the world leader in the design and production of microporous materials, filtration devices, and separation systems in both the life sciences and the industrial sectors. Within the life sciences division, Pall offered solutions which enabled customers to purify air and water, advance therapies from the research and development stage to production, and finally to delivery to patients. Throughout our rich history, we have worked closely with many of the leading medical device companies, which has afforded us the knowledge to understand applications and requirements in this industry. Our proven track record in technology and innovation, in our membrane and device capabilities, manufacturing excellence, and regulatory compliance is well recognized and serves as evidence of our commitment to our customers in the markets they serve. So in 2015, Pall Corporation joined Danaher, a global science and technology leader, and its family of companies. And just this past May, the Life Sciences Division united with Cytiva, another Danaher company, as one business partner under the Cytiva name, forming a stronger global provider of technologies and services to advance and accelerate the development, manufacture, and delivery of therapeutics. The Pall Medical portfolio remained a market brand, and now alongside Danaher's diagnostic and life sciences businesses, Cytiva's focus is to accelerate the impact of innovation to help improve human health. Within this new structure, Pall Medical continues to include a multi-site manufacturing organization with remarkable portfolio of products, ISO-certified systems, and experience to meet your diverse requirements. So at Cytiva, we know you're counting on our ability to bring products that meet the quality and performance standards that you demand. Our broad portfolio of filtration, separation, and purification solutions are used in life sciences applications throughout the globe. From the bioprocess business that focuses on drug research, development, and production, to Pall's medical focus in reducing the risk of infection in infusion therapy, water filtration, and venting applications, our products are key to processes and materials that make our world better. The applications listed before you are just a sample of those for which we do provide solutions for. Drug delivery or infusion therapy, protection of patients, healthcare workers, and equipment from airborne contaminants, as well as components for medical sets, laboratory and diagnostic tests, and biopharmaceutical processing are all areas of critical importance that require filtration or separation solutions to achieve the desired results. Our OEM solutions are used as a component within our customers' marketed products or as tools in the manufacturing and quality assurance for these bioscience products. So our focus today is on hydrophobic filter membranes. So why use one in your application? These products play a critical role in a variety of applications, ultimately offering a range of benefits to the end users, both patients and healthcare workers alike. For example, filter membranes help reduce the risk associated with bacterial and/or particulate contamination to immunocompromised patients, as well as protect healthcare workers during medical procedures and the preparation and delivery of medications. This then results in improved patient outcomes, along with a safer environment for medical personnel. On this slide are just a couple examples where hydrophobic filter materials play a critical role. In essence, their role is actually threefold. Number one is reduce the risk of airborne contaminants from entering or exiting a closed system, such as in oxygen concentrators or surgical smoke evacuation used in laparoscopic procedures. They can act as a liquid barrier to contain a liquid within a device or prevent liquid from damaging sensitive electrical components, and help equalize pressure, allowing effective drainage of a fluid in a closed system, such as IV delivery and urine drain bags. Over to the right, we provide just pictures of three examples. So starting with the left-hand side, we've got a drip chamber with a spike vent. On that top portion, where you see the arrow, a vent membrane is located to filter ambient air as it enters the device, while it's acting as a barrier for the infusion. In closed systems such as IV and/or enteral feeding delivery systems, hydrophobic vents upstream of the patient facilitate the flow of fluid without the bag or the bottle collapsing. Turning to the top right, in portable suction or vacuum pumps, a filter membrane protects the internal components and pathways going into or out of the equipment. And then lastly, the bottom right, we picture a urine drainage bag with a vent, which is typically used with patients experiencing incontinence or urine retention, or perhaps are just undergoing a surgical procedure. When used in fluid collections devices such as these, a hydrophobic membrane helps equalize the pressure, allowing the fluid to be collected safely as it prevents leaks. Now, when we talk about filters, they can be segregated into different types of categories. Two such categories are as a filter screen and as a filter membrane. And these different types have different characteristics that impact the performance in each application. For example, filter screens offer a two-dimensional structure. These types provide certain advantages in that they allow for high flow rates and lower flow resistance. And due to this structure, however, their filtration efficiency is limited. A screen relies primarily on what we call the mechanism of direct interception, which is basically that retention is limited to particle size. From a filtration standpoint, on the negative side is that contaminants that are smaller than the pore size, or perhaps contaminants that can be deformed, could pass through the screen quite readily. In contrast, a filter membrane offers a structure with depth and a higher surface area, which can be appreciated when inspected under magnification, appearing in a way like a sponge, like in the image. So rather than a straight hole or a channel from one side of the membrane to the other. Although airflow and flow resistance will be lower than in a screen, the retention efficiency improves by orders of magnitude as now multiple retention mechanisms are at play. With this type of structure and a little imagination of perhaps seeing yourself as a particle entering a filter membrane, particulate is removed from the fluid stream based on its size. This is what we call direct interception. Smaller particles will also be retained by the filter due to inertial impaction. For those students or perhaps ex-students of physics, if you remember, matter will continue its uniform motion in a straight line unless that state is changed by an external force. So as the internal structure of the filter membrane will resemble somewhat of a tortuous path, smaller particles will be stuck within the structure when it cannot change directions. One other mechanism that comes into play is diffusional interception. And in that one, the differences in charges between the surface of the membrane and the surface of the particle will cause them to be attracted and result in the particle itself being trapped on the surface of the membrane. So now we turn to the selection process where we'll review both the application and the manufacturing process to essentially tell us what the needs are. So the objective of this exercise is to be the expert of the application. By considering it from different perspectives, you'll gain a well-rounded understanding of what the device is intended to accomplish, how the filter membrane will fit within its performance, and what the manufacturing process will require. In a way, then, you'll be listening to the application, and this will aid you to select the best possible candidate. This will answer the first question of what information do I need to make a selection? The answers to this question then pave the way to the next question that we have here. How do we make a connection between the application requirements and the product specifications of the membrane? Creating this connection or this bridge provides hard quantitative and qualitative data which support the design of the finished product and its specifications. With the two, you then meet the device's design objectives, the finished product claims, and you avoid significant delays during the validation process or perhaps even in production after the product has been launched. So the critical characteristics that we'll look at are based on three different perspectives, which are design, performance, and compliance. So in the next few minutes, we'll do just a deeper dive into these different areas. So we've all learned of the importance of identifying and clearly articulating the purpose of a finished device. What is it? What does it do? How does it do it? How does the device need to respond when it's in the hand of different users or exposed to different conditions? What features are must-have versus nice-to-have? So once these questions are answered, then we turn to the role of the filter membrane and see how it falls into place. So at this stage, let's just start with some basics. What is the primary role of the filter membrane in the application? Is it air or gas filtration, meaning that the gas is being pumped through the filter membrane? Is it venting, so aiming for just a passive or low pressure exchange of air or gas through the filter membrane? Is it flow control, meaning that it just aids in regulating the flow of air through a system? Or does it need to serve as a liquid barrier to protect sensitive electronic components or avoid a leak of a fluid being delivered? The answer to these questions then goes hand in hand with how the membrane is being incorporated into the design. So will it be inline, meaning that it's on the direct path of that gas as it's being pumped through it? Or is it perhaps on a longitudinal direction of the device so that, for example, a liquid is making incidental contact with the membrane as it's passing next to it? I realize this is a lot of information to process and even on the next few slides. So this is where at Pall Medical we can certainly jump in and help you answer a lot of these questions and guide you through this process as well. So if a liquid, looking at the, still obviously at the design, so if a liquid will contact the membrane during use, it's important to understand if there could be any potential interactions with the filter membrane. For example, look at it from the perspective of chemical compatibility. There are chemicals that, given certain conditions, such as their concentration, if they are contacting the membrane while at higher temperatures and or pressures, over an extended period of time, they may impact the performance or even degrade a filter membrane while in use. So if a liquid will contact the membrane, think what type of fluid is it? Is it, for example, aqueous-based? Does it have a low or high pH? From a liquid barrier perspective, does it contain surfactants? What is its surface tension? It is important to understand if the fluid contacting the membrane has a high or low surface tension. If it has a high surface tension, as in the case of water-based solutions such as saline, a membrane with hydrophobic properties should suffice. If, on the other hand, the solution contains any type of surfactant, any alcohols or oils, perhaps like a solution with lipids or maybe a particular drug so that its surface tension is lower, then a membrane with oleophobic properties, will be needed. Is the fluid under pressure as it moves through the device? If so, will the liquid contact the membrane at this pressure? If this is the case, you will need to evaluate and make sure that the filter membrane has those hydrophobic properties, typically measured via a water breakthrough or water intrusion test, that it has specified values that exceed that system pressure. Otherwise, you may run into an unintended solution where the liquid is forced through the membrane, which may not be what you're looking for. So moving on to the processing needs, think through the equipment that will be used to cut and seal the membrane onto the device housing. In this aspect, we want to align with the material's physical characteristics, such as its thickness and tensile strength. So is it an automated process, so such as a reel-to-reel where the membrane will be purchased in a roll form and during production an automated equipment is punching out small coupons and seals them into a housing? So what are the thickness requirements so that the membrane can enter and move through the manufacturing equipment? At what tension will the membrane be pulled through the manufacturing process? So is the material adequate so that it's not deforming or perhaps even tearing inside the equipment? You will need to evaluate that there's sufficient membrane on the edges and in between the cuts on the rewind side so that once that coupon, equipment can rewind the remaining skeleton of sorts without breaks. From a dimensional perspective too, include in your evaluation the roll dimensions as the outer diameter of the roll for the unwind station, the roll width, and the tolerances your equipment can work with. If, on the other hand, the material is purchased in a sheet or a disc form, how will that material be managed and handled through the manufacturing process to avoid any damage to it? Roll products, one other thing on roll products is that the specifications may well allow for splices as well as special markings, perhaps for small defects on the membrane. Does your process have the capability to perform a visual inspection? Or automatically, or will you be relying on an operator to manually inspect these process and parts? And lastly, for this slide, in 2022, we presented a webinar where we discussed guidelines for sealing. So we want to make sure to mention, obviously, this aspect as well. So what type of sealing method will be used? There are certain variety of sealing methods used in the manufacturing of medical devices, which must be aligned, obviously, not only to the desired output, but to the filter membranes and the housing materials that they will be sealed onto. Depending on the method type, a filter membrane may or may not be suited for it, given the specific conditions of energy, time, and pressure involved in each of these specific methods. So it's important to bear in mind this aspect just to avoid risk of damaging the product. The last point under design then takes into consideration the post-manufacturing sterilization step. If the finished device will be subjected to a sterilization process, it's important to note what method will be used. Some of these filter materials are susceptible to physical or performance degradation in certain conditions involving radiation, high heat, or perhaps high humidity. And also, think if the finished device will be a one-time use or perhaps will be used multiple times. If the latter, will it be cleaned and re-sterilized in between uses? And if so, will it be done using the same method as it was done post-manufacturing, or will it be different? So moving from a performance perspective, let's look at what is expected of the finished device and the hydrophobic membrane during use. So if particulate retention is a must-have in your checklist, what do you want to remove from the air or from that gas stream? Also, what level of retention is required for your application? Do you know what pore size you are going to need? Does the device and or system have a required flow rate to maintain its function? So in other words, does it have to pass a specific volume of gas in a specific amount of time at a specific pressure? The flow rate requires volume, time, pressure, and area, and it's typically expressed in units of measure such as liters per minute per square centimeter, square inch at a specific pressure. If so, make sure you leave room in your design to accommodate, perhaps even to accommodate for the size of the filter membrane open area, so you're not compromising on some other aspect of the performance. And the last point is related to regulatory compliance. So companies that work with health, employee safety, and other similar areas must meet certain regulatory standards and are responsible for their finished device meeting all their performance claims. Depending on the industry and the use of the finished device, you'll need to ensure that it meets the related regulations and standards that it's subject to, which may well encompass not only the performance claims, but also the raw material composition. So will the membrane specifically be specified in regulatory submissions? If so, will you be needing any type of supporting documentation to keep on file for the raw materials in your device, including that filter membrane? So these type of things you need to consider early on in the process and come to an agreement with the raw material suppliers, such as the product specifications and notifications in case of a change is implemented that may impact the material's form, fit, or function, just to ensure that you have adequate support for your device through its life cycle. And now we'll present just a brief overview of our membrane product solutions. So what are some of the advantages of using Cytiva and Pall medical materials? First, we design and manufacture the largest selection of microporous materials. We offer just a wide range of material performance and surface chemistry characteristics to meet just a variety of application requirements. Third, compatibility with multiple sealing technologies and sterilization methods. Fourth, assurance that many of these products have been used extensively and in some cases for more than 30 years in the manufacturing of FDA-regulated devices and sets. And last, our products are manufactured to exacting specifications and under strict quality standards. So as you may expect, different applications will have different filtration requirements and processing requirements. So at Pall Medical, we offer just a wide selection of filtration, separation, and purification materials to help you optimize your product performance and minimize your development project costs. In this slide, we list all of the product families available on an OEM basis to our customers. And each of these materials were designed to meet the filtration requirements in medical or healthcare related applications. As you can see, our portfolio includes a selection made from various polymer types. So these are available in different pore sizes, different surface characteristics, and packaging formats such as rolls, sheets, or round discs. The unique physical characteristics of these materials allow our customers to choose the product that best suits their processing and application needs. Among these, you will find hydrophilic materials, which are typically used in liquid filtration applications, as well as hydrophobic filter media used in venting and gas filtration applications, which is our focus today. Some filter membranes in this list are unsupported, while others have a support for increased mechanical strength and better handling characteristics, as required by different processing steps or equipment. Depending on the product type too, the support material may be internal, that is within the structure of the membrane, or external, as in on a laminated product where membrane is adhered to a nonwoven material. The images that we have on this slide give you just a microscopic glimpse of physical differences found in the structure of some of these materials. And one last point is that the widespread use of our materials by leading medical device manufacturing companies around the world not only supports the reliability of our product's performance against our published certifications, but also about the robust nature of our quality systems. So this portfolio is divided into two main categories based on the end application. We have the gas filtration and venting, and liquid filtration. And here we've listed some of the brands and the product families under each category, each of which has individual grades and pore sizes that were developed to meet the requirements across the spectrum of applications requiring a filtration membrane. So doing a dive specifically into our gas filtration and venting portfolio, Versapor RC membranes are at the top of the list. So this is the latest generation of membranes with hydrophobic and oleophobic properties in our portfolio, which are designed for the removal of airborne contaminants in venting applications. And these are made from three materials of construction. You start with an acrylic copolymer matrix, an internal nonwoven nylon support that renders the membrane, that improves handling and sealing, and a proprietary post-treatment that then renders the membrane with hydrophobic and oleophobic properties. These membranes address also the changing requirements driven recently by environmental regulations regarding the use of PFOA, its salts, and PFOA-related substances. So here we share an overview of the performance specifications. As you can see, we offer 6 different pore size ratings so that we have options to match the requirements of a large variety of applications. Want to note too that these membranes are compatible with multiple sterilization methods and offer adequate airflow rates and water breakthrough, or if you call it water intrusion pressures, for many applications. Next are Emplon PTFE membranes. So we manufacture the PTFE membranes and laminate them onto a polyester support for improved handling. So as the support material in this case is external, just one note, we do recommend that during the sealing, the membrane is oriented so that the support is facing towards the housing. So these membranes are hydrophobic in nature, and their high tidal reduction and water breakthrough pressures, as you can see, allow the membrane to repel high surface tension liquids at high pressures while doing the function of venting gases. In this product family, the pore size offering is limited to a high or a large pore size of a 1 micron, as you can see. And one other point is that PTFE is an inert material, so that does offer just broad chemical compatibility. Our other offering in our gas filtration and venting portfolio is the Pallflex family of hydrophobic glass fiber media. This unique offering is compatible with applications where they're using low system pressures, typically less than 3 psi, that require high airflow rates for venting and low differential pressures. The different grades are composed of primarily a glass fiber matrix with a high performance binder, and this is on a cellulose support, and post-treated to render them with hydrophobic properties. Do want to point out that the top 3 grades, the BO70DW, the EO1008E, and the EO1340 are oleophobic as well, so it makes them resistant to wetting with lower surface tension fluids, such as a lipid solution. So let's wrap up our discussion then by summarizing the key characteristics and how we can help you through this process. We also want to take advantage and share a link to our brand new virtual hospital, which was launched recently, before we move on to our Q&A. So the critical characteristics to consider during the planning and development of a device with a membrane are best captured when approaching it from 3 different perspectives: the design, performance, and compliance. From the design, make sure you've identified the types of fluids and volumes of these fluids that will come in contact with the membrane to help ascertain chemical compatibility and surface tension requirements. Consider the different conditions the finished device will be subject to in the application, ensuring to build in some safety margins with regards to pressure and temperature. And also evaluate your processing and sealing capabilities and list the sterilization method that will be used, if any. From a performance perspective, define if there's a specific retention or removal required, as well as desired flow rates, taking into account the system pressure, the design of the open filter area, and the flow rate. And last, from a compliance perspective, evaluate the specific regulations related to the finished device and its materials of composition, and make sure to discuss them with your filter material supplier. Also remember, we are here, that we have the experience and technical knowledge to help you through this selection process. Just want to highlight our business approach is founded on 4 core competencies. So first, Pall Medical offers just a large selection of membrane and microporous material chemistries, which we showed already, which ensure optimal performance in your application. Second, and I didn't go into a lot of detail earlier in the presentation, but we also have the capability of combining the right membrane with the right device platform to get you the best combination for your needs in filtration, separation, purification, or detection. Third, expert testing and scientific support is available from more than 20 dedicated locations around the globe. And last, our global manufacturing network, as well as our experience in regulatory compliance, just enhances the reliability of our customer operations. Finally, get your cameras ready and get ready to take a tour of our interactive virtual hospital, where you can learn about patient safety risks, countermeasures to mitigate these risks, as well as the many benefits Pall Medical's devices and other solutions bring to the different hospital areas. And with that, we want to thank you again for joining us and want to encourage you to contact us to discuss your membrane and application requirements. I'll turn it over to you, Cassie, for the Q&A section. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacques, for your informative presentation. We will now start the live Q&A portion of the webinar. If you have a question you'd like to ask, please do so now. Just click on the Ask a Question box located on the lower left corner of your screen, and we'll answer as many of your questions as we have time for. Or you can always contact Pall Medical directly at 774-556-9252. Let's go ahead and get started. Our first question that we have here says, you've discussed hydrophobic membranes for venting. Could I use a hydrophobic filter in place of a hydrophilic filter in place of a hydrophobic one?
Yes, absolutely. So we do have customers that have used hydrophilic membranes in this application. The one thing that obviously to highlight is if there is a fluid that will contact the membrane, that fluid, because if the membrane is hydrophilic in this case, it's very well going to wet with that fluid, so it's going to stop the function of the venting. Um, so just something to keep in mind. If there's no risk for any fluid to come in contact with the membrane, there shouldn't be any major issues.
Great. Thank you so much. Our next question that we have here says, do you have any recommendations for checking the integrity of the membrane filter?
All right. Yeah, no, that's a good question. So there are a few different aspects to consider. If you're looking to do like a 100% integrity check, typically what's used is a visual inspection, perhaps just with a camera at a high magnification. So you're looking at the whole area, particularly focusing around the seal area, just to verify that there's obviously no breach. If you see, for example, where uh, it does not look uniform, the seal itself, that could give you an indication that there's some issue, with the sealing process. You could also see perhaps if there's any damage to the membrane, perhaps with light passing through, it could be that there's perhaps a little hole, for example, on the membrane. That's typically more used on those 100% inspections. If your idea is to perhaps release on an AQL, so you're pulling samples out, then you can perform some type of a test, for example, a water breakthrough test or water intrusion test, as it's referred to. In that case, you can see if, verify the performance of the membrane within the device, in that way do it. But just as I've mentioned a couple times in the presentation, if you want to discuss with us, if you have any further questions or any particular details you want to review as far as your test method goes, please make sure and reach out.
Great. Thank you. These are great questions coming in, and I just want to remind everyone they can participate in this live Q&A by typing their question in the lower left corner for the Ask a Question box. Our next question that we have here says, do you have a preferred method for cutting or punching discs of the membrane?
Yeah, I mean, typically you could use anything like from a rotary die, steel rule die, or male-female dies work well. In this case, just make sure that the dies are maintained, quite sharp, and that they're striking the membrane just on a hard surface. They're also, I guess, depending on the process, you might need some type of interleaf material in between where you kind of sandwich in the membrane in between, so that it can cut cleanly just the edges of the membrane.
Great.
I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. Our next question here that I'm going to ask says, what pressure drop should be considered to design hydrophobic filter? It's a two-parter. Our application is to produce sterile air with 0.2 micron filter. Air is from oil-free centrifugal air. Compressor is 2 psi or 0.14 bar OK.
All right. Yeah, that's a good question, and we might need to ask a few questions about the application, but initially it really boils down to what your finished device requires. Obviously, depending on what the pressure is upstream of that membrane is, that's something to consider. One thing too, and I did not allude to this during the presentation, is that depending on what that the pressure is for that flow of air coming through. Um, it might be, you might find that you could use even a larger pore size than just a 0.2 micron. So 0.2 micron membranes for, as far as sterilization type, where you're filtering air, because the mechanics or the of that flow of air through the membrane differ a bit as compared to liquid. You might find that you can go higher on that pore size, and in that way, just perhaps just make sure that you keep that delta P at the level that you require. Um, but certainly, I want to encourage you, if you can give us a call, we can certainly review, I guess, verify what test method you're using, what sort of organism you're using to challenge with to verify it, verify that sterility claim, and we can walk through and make sure that you've got the right membrane for sure.
Great, thank you. Our next question here that we have from our audience says, what special notes to be considered while preparing data sheet of hydrophobic membrane filter?
I'm sorry, could you review that one more time?
It says, what special notes to be considered while preparing data sheet of hydrophobic membrane filter?
All right. Typically, you want to obviously look at what supporting data you have for the membranes. So, for example, if looking at what the release testing is, first of all, and in the case of our membranes, for example, we do test for water breakthrough pressure for all of the products. Looking at the application itself. So from a airflow rate perspective, verify and then obviously list what the conditions of that test are. What area you're using, what pressure you're using for how much time, and then perhaps any physical characteristics, for example, any thickness. I guess those would be a start. But basically trying to match those with whatever the claims are for your finished product, and in a way to be able to match what the application needs of the end user are.
Wonderful, thank you. I have another question here that I'll go ahead and ask. This one says, could you clarify what you mean by building in safety margins with regards to pressure?
Yes. So in this case, and going back to that water breakthrough or water intrusion pressure test that I was mentioning, so that test, like the name implies, you're using water because it's the easiest fluid to test with. And basically, you're ramping up the pressure on that fluid, on that water, upstream of the filter, and then you're looking to detect at what pressure that water is passing through the filter over to the downstream side. So I'm just going to say as an example, if the membrane is rated at a water breakthrough, let's say a minimum of 6 psi, your application requires, let's see, that pressure that the air is going to be flowing through is at 6 psi. That would be cutting it very close. So when I say by safety margin, is make sure you've got maybe like maybe 1.5x, let's say, between the water breakthrough and what your system pressure is. And that way, if there's any spike in the pressure during the application, you're protecting it. You're basically making sure that you're not even close to what the performance of the membrane is in that aspect, and then you're ensuring that that liquid barrier is effective. Hope that makes sense.
Thank you. And it looks like we have one more question here today. That question states, does your company offer any filter screens or only membranes? And if so, what are they made of?
All right. Oh, good pickup. So yes, we do offer filter screens, but here I would encourage you to give us a call just to understand what your needs are. But we do have, polyester, polycarbonate base type materials. But obviously we would have to discuss with you just to understand what your requirements are there and see if we can find the best match for you.
Fantastic, Jacques. Thank you. And before we go today, do you have any final comments for our audience?
Just want to make sure that I'm clear. We're here to help you in your selection. I know we kind of went through this, at a good clip. So if you want to sit down with us, certainly we can schedule a call to discuss with you what your application needs are. Try and look for the best match for your application, and then we can schedule sending you samples, sending you additional information to consider, and hopefully make sure you stay on track with your project. And obviously, I do want to thank you again for your time here with us in this webinar.
Great. Thank you again, Jacques, for your time today and for your important research. We would also like to thank Labroots and our sponsor, Pall Medical, for underwriting today's educational webcast. Before we go, I'd like to thank the audience for joining us today and for their interesting questions. Questions we didn't have time for today or those submitted during the on-demand period will be addressed by our speaker via the contact information you provided at the time of registration. This webcast can be viewed on demand. Labroots will alert you via email when it's available for replay. We encourage you to share that email with your colleagues who may have missed today's live event. Until next time, take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Right. Thank you.